As we continue our journey parting the Mist Veil through the lands of Mysteria, we come across New, the Mystic Assassin, for the recent set of Part the Mist Veil, and boy howdy, is she a menace in Clash. Let's go ahead and check out a little deck tech for her and some gameplay, and see how she does as she slithers her way into the minds of her opponent. Welcome on in Dragonfolk. It is such a pleasure to see you all here today as we go over another of the mystic heroes from Part the Mist Veil, New, the Mystic Assassin. So what I wanted to say first and foremost is I've said some things about this hero that I do believe are very, very, very true in regards to the attack reaction step being just like her favorite place. Not to mention, she's got some very powerful cards such as Intimate Inducement, which I know I run in this deck, as well as her Mystic Assassin reactions. They are great for this card in particular right here, Double Trouble, which we'll get into later, but it's just insanely cool how interactive this deck is, and it really makes your opponent think about every aspect of how they perform in a match like this. How do they block? How do they properly attack? Do they block with blues? Do they block with reds? Do they even bother blocking at all? And are they expecting to take a whopping 7 to 10 damage and lose cards off the top of their deck? It's very, very awesome, and I love how interactive the deck is. So if you really like a interactive, make your opponent think kind of deck, New might be the one for you. But this is Clash, the fan-made format that is pretty much just a budget version of Blitz, and I'm going to go over my deck list here, show you guys what this is all about, and maybe you want to try it for yourself. I'll leave the link to this in the description down below, so if you guys wanted to go ahead and check it out, you certainly can. But let's go over the list, see what's inside. So first, obviously, we start with New. Her hero ability says that if you attack with a stealth card, any action card that's blocking it when the chain resolves is banished. So they don't go to the graveyard like they normally would, they are banished instead. So luckily, you can block stealth cards with attack reactions or defense reactions, and you won't have to worry so much about that. But it's really her chi ability that makes her a very interesting hero. She can pitch a chi at instant speed as many times as she wants, as long as she has chi, to look at the top card of an opposing hero's deck. And if it's a blue card on the top of their deck, it gets banished. Otherwise, it just goes back on the top of their deck. Then until the end of your turn, you can go ahead and play cards from your opponent's banish zone for no resource cost, so long as you have the action points to do it. So for instance, you couldn't play every card from their banish zone that's a blue if there isn't a go again word attached to it, or you don't have a way to give it go again. You can essentially just play a card and then move on with the rest of your turn. But you can access attack reactions and even defense reactions, although I don't know many people who are running blue defense reactions outside of maybe like Guardians or something of the sort. Blue Unmovable being like the one that I'm thinking of. It is, she's a very interesting hero. She gets to utilize a lot of that power during the late game after you've kind of stacked up your opponent's banish zone. You get to come in and just slam a whole bunch of cards against your opponent for nearly nothing, which is really, really powerful. Then, of course, we are running two weapons. We are running the Beckoning Mistblade as her one dagger. You get to get the next blue attack gets +1 and go again. And then you have Spider's Bite. This is just because like literally every deck has attack actions outside of Kano and some other heroes. So it's oftentimes you're going to be running into attack action cards, and if they end up blocking with them, they'll block for 1 if Spider's Bite hits. The armor, we are running a Rousing Wave for that attack reaction to give us a Fang Strike and also count as an attack reaction. And of course, Battle Worn 1, very powerful. Koi-Blessed Kimono is our chess piece, because if we do end up getting to 1 life, we can go ahead and we can just grab a chi from our deck, be able to pitch it and then utilize our opponent's banish zone to the best of our ability. We are running the Mask of Malicious Manifestations. This is kind of for one of those situations where if you find yourself with a all attack reaction hand, or maybe attack and D-reacts in hand, you can always go ahead and play Mask of Malicious Manifestations, and you can go ahead and find that attack action card and get it to your hand. That way you're able to play it with those attack reactions. And then for our boots, we have Undertow Stilettos. This is much like the Arousing Wave, in which it has Battleworn 1, but it's also a wonderful attack reaction that gets us another attack reaction to our hand, which we can double up on. And speaking of double, we're going to get into this deck list here. The only thing that has changed is I have changed just a one thing. And it's that I removed 2 cards from this deck. And for the life of me, it's a Blue Impulsive Desire. I removed 2 Blue Impulsive Desire for 2 Raging Onslaught. The reason I did this is strictly because this deck doesn't really have much of a like, oh, they're going to come in for a lot all the time. Because sometimes you don't have the resources or the actual card itself to have an attack reaction. So having something like Raging Onslaught is definitely important to have in the deck. It's also a popper. Even if you can just get 2 poppers into the deck, especially 7-cost poppers, for in case you're going up against a Prism or anything of the sort, this is just a great way to go ahead and start that off. But let's go ahead and start off with our attack actions here. So we've got Art of Desire Body. These stealth cards that have came out in Part the Mistveil are incredibly powerful, and they're all in their rares and commons, but Art of Desire is super great because if they block with a red card, you get to draw a card and gain a life because it will be banished if it's an action. But you also hit the hero and you get a banish the top card off the top of their deck effect if this hits. So not only do you get to banish the top card of their deck, but if they block and they block with a red card, you get to draw a card and gain a life strictly based off that. Super, super awesome. These Art of Desires are really, really good. The next card we are running is Bonds of Attraction. We're running the reds and the blues. This is great because it essentially can net you pretty much 2 life, because what happens is you can banish. You're not really getting 2 life. I think you're technically getting 1 because they errated the rule for this, but you banish the top card of their deck if this hits, and then you banish a card from their graveyard. And whenever this card banishes a card, if it had banished another card with the same color, you get 1 life. So, for instance, if they block this, and then you are able to get over and hit, if you get a red card off the top, and then you look at a red card in their graveyard, you then can put both of those cards. You put both of those cards in the banish zone, and you gain a life. And if your opponent blocked with a red, then that also will gain you a life because it is the same color as those, and technically Bonds did banish it when you attacked with it. So Bonds of Attraction, much better than Bonds of Memory. Desires of Flesh, super powerful because again, attack actions are really its target. So if it does banish an attack action card, you gain life. A lot of these new stealth cards have you gain life, and that's really, really important in a 20 health format to be able to just stack life whenever you want. Double Trouble is pretty much the card for the deck. Double Trouble is a key hitter in this deck because it costs 0, it blocks for 3, it comes in for 3, but if you've played 2 or more attack reactions, this chain link specifically on Double Trouble, this will get +2, and it'll banish the top 2 cards off your opponent's deck if it hits. So getting 2 attack reactions is significantly easy and new because you have access to cards like Hiss, and even using things like Undertow Stilettos to get you an attack reaction here, and then an attack reaction here for the strikes or the slithers, any of these ephemeral attack reactions. Really, really powerful to be able to do that. And then this gets to come in for what, like 8, 9 sometimes, maybe even 10 if you have the resources for it. So being able to get that much damage up and then still banishing the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck, wow, super, super awesome. I love this card. Definitely a lot of value there. Then, of course, we are running Hiss. Hiss and Venomous Bite both. These are just the reds. These are the Mystic Assassin reactions that I was talking about, where you get to play them, and then if you pitch to blue at all this turn, you get to create another attack reaction in your hand, and that attack reaction is then able to be used on the same card. So Venomous Bite is kind of the go tall one because you get +3 and then +1 from the Fang Strike, whereas Hiss is +3 and then go again from the Slither. So if you're trying to go wide, Hiss is great. If you're trying to go tall, Venomous Bite is great. Moving into our next attack action here is Mind's Desire. This is the same thing as Desires of Flesh, same stats and everything. The only difference is that it's looking for non-attack action cards. So anything of those pump spells or anything of the sort, if it ends up banishing those, then you get to gain life off of that. Super powerful against rangers and so on and so forth. So it really helps you gain a bunch of life there. Then we are running the 1 Razor Reflex. Believe it or not, the Razor Reflex, always a good tech if you can get it in there, because swords and daggers, this, if you're coming in and your opponent's at 2 life and you come in with a dagger and your opponent goes, oh, well, it's just a dagger, I can just take 1, it'll be comfortable. You can hit him with a Razor Reflex and go, oh shit. And now it'll come in for 4. And if they don't have a D-react, they lose. That is just key shenanigans that this deck does. But you only run 1 because you don't really need multiple of them. It only blocks for 2. You don't really want that. 2 Sink Belows. And then we get into our 3rd Mystic Attack reaction, which is the Intimate Inducement. This card is crazy good. I've talked about it previously in commoner videos, and it's just crazy awesome. It blocks for 3. It costs nothing to play it. The only thing is that every single color, whether it be red, yellow, or blue, gives a target assassin or mystic attack action card +1 power. So they all give +1 power all throughout, but what they do differently is they allow you to look at different amounts of cards from the top of your opponent's deck. You can choose any card from that amount of cards you're looking at, but if it happens to be a blue, its base power will be 0. You can then put that chosen card onto the chain link, on the the active chain link that you're on, and have it defend whatever you're attacking with. You then can put the rest of the cards on the top of your deck, so on the top of your opponent's deck. So now you get to look at what your opponent's next hand is kind of looking to be. On top of that, you are also stripping resources from their deck. In most cases, you do want to grab a blue, because blues you are able to use with your chi ability later on, possibly. But if you see a big key piece there, like a really powerful specialization or something that just kind of fits your fancy a little bit more, even if it means you're not going to hit, being able to take a card from that and then banish it is much the same as being able to hit. So it just pulls cards from your opponent's deck, super powerful. And the fact it costs 0 is insane. I think if it cost 1, it might have been like somewhat more okay. And honestly, it's just bonkers. I love the card a lot. Art of Desire Mind is just like Art of Desire Body, except it cares about blue cards. I am running Backstab. Not sure how I feel about this card, but I kind of feel like it's a great game ender because defense reactions can't be played to Backstab's chain link. And if you have the resources to pump this up a whole lot, I'm thinking about possibly switching this out for the red one, but this is coming in for 1, and then you can go ahead and pump it up a little bit more with like a Venomous Bite. Venomous Bite will give it +3, bring it to 4, +1 with the Fang Strike, bring it to 5, and defense reactions can't be played. It doesn't do as much as I'd like it to, but if you're trying to make it so your opponent doesn't play D-reacts and you're trying to force cards out of their hand, then this is certainly a way to do that. You then also only are running 3 Transcend cards in here. Still not sure if 3 is the number. 4 tends to be pretty comfortable, but I brought it down to 3 because you do not want to brick a whole hand full of Transcend cards. It's just not going to feel good. But you're going to play Passover so you can target your opponent's stuff in their graveyard, find that key card that you want to use in their graveyard, preferably a blue, and put it into their banished zone. That way you can use it later. Path Well Traveled allows these stealth cards to sometimes get go again, and allows you to continue on with your chain, presenting more damage to your opponent, as well as possible more banishing of their cards. And then the Grain Tips the Scale is just another +1 attack power. So if you're attacking for 6 and your opponent's blocking 6 and you're trying to just get a little bit over, Grain the Tips the Scale is really, really good. I would only really use it outside of it using its Transcend ability if you are looking to close the game, right? If your opponent's at 1 and they block 6 and you attack for 6 and you need that 1 extra damage to get over, Grains is definitely the way to go about doing it. I suggest getting all of these cards to Transcend as soon as possible. That way you have access to the ability to look at your opponent's top card and really kind of filter through their blues and make sure that you're able to utilize them later as well. And then, of course, we are running the Blue Shred. This is just super great. It works great for Temper Armor. So if your opponent's running Civic Steps, they can block it with Civic Steps and you can shred it. And there's nothing better than shredding the hell out of a Temper piece of equipment. You also have even things like Olympia's Helmet has Temper. Several Temper things were introduced into the format through heavy hitters, and Shred is a great way to go, hey, you don't have Temper anymore, and just get rid of your armor piece altogether. So that's that. We have a pretty standard Arcane Barrier sideboard here with 2 Oasis, an Arcane Lantern, which you'd swap out the Spider's Bite for Arcane Lantern in that case if you're going against a wizard, and then you have Null Rune Gloves, and Hood. So you really only need AB3 in most cases, but worst case scenario, you just ditch the Arcane Lantern, or you ditch the gloves to get you +1 onto your next attack. But either way, blocking 4, I mean, you have the resources for it, so it's not like it's impossible for you to do that. But that's the deck here. It's done pretty well for me so far. It's fairly consistent on what it does. You really just want to play a stealth card, pump it with attack reactions, deal a little bit of chip damage, and also start banishing cards from their deck. And eventually you'll be able to use those cards later and really kind of power through. So let's take a quick look at a game that I had done for New and kind of see how she plays in the format. All right, let's take a quick look here at a game against a Vincent. Now, Vincent's got a lot of powerful stuff here in Clash with the addition of those rares, but all I really need is just 1 AB to deal with the Rune Chance, and the rest is pretty much good for me. So I'm wearing just the Null Rune Hood, and then I'm keeping my chest, my arms, and my legs. So I'm going second in this situation. My opponent's goal is pretty much just to stack up Rune Chance and then come in with Rune Gate attacks. But lucky for me, this is a deck in which I actually excel pretty well in, simply because the more cards that I banish from their deck and from their hand when they block, if they have Blood Debt, my opponent is going to be taking a lot of Blood Debt. Blood Debt is a shadow ability where a lot of these cards that they end up playing have Blood Debt, which means that if they are in the banish zone for too long, essentially, they end up costing the hero life. So you'll see there's going to be big chunks of damage taken away later on. For instance, here I am going to be playing my Double Trouble. They're going to block for 3 with a blue Deathly Whale. I'm then going to respond with a Razor Reflex, and then they're going to respond with a reduced to Rune Chant. So now it is going to be a whopping 7. So it's going to block 7 into 6, but luckily I do get the +2 if I activate another attack action. So I'm going to actually do that, and I'm going to get a Fang Strike here. I'm coming in for 8. I end up banishing 2 cards off the top of their deck as well as their Deathly Whale, and they end up having 4 cards in the banish zone with Rune Gate, which is really rough, and they have a lot of damage. That ends up is really, really tough, because once that Blood Debt kind of like creeps up on you, you can't get rid of it like Leviathan can. So it's very, very difficult to commit to something like that. So my opponent is going to go ahead and, again, continue to try and attack me with the Rune Gate cards. And they're going to be very, very powerful cards. But luckily, if I block efficiently with things like the Sink Below in hand, and also utilize my armor a little bit better, I can always go ahead and get a full amount of value out of these, no problem. So our goal is to kind of just make sure that the rune chants don't get out of control, and that we block. Our opponent plays a Mauvrin Skies, so we're obviously going to go ahead and just make sure to block this entire turn out, because we certainly don't want them getting any kind of, additional stuff. We get to go ahead and pitch all these blues to the rune chants, so don't have to worry about that. And now we're trying to see whether or not this Deathly Whale is going to come in for a smaller amount, or it's just going to be fine. In this situation, they are just going to be playing a Deathly Whale for 4, and I'm going to block it with a Wonderful Sink Below, and then they're going to be able to come in with a Flail of Agony. Now, this will make them a rune chant if they hit, but I'm going to go ahead and just block that out anyway. It's not going to be the end of the world. My turn is simple. It's just play a 3 attack. The thing with Vincent in this matchup is that Vincent has to discard a card to Banish Zone. She has to banish a card from her hand every turn that she has a card in hand. So she usually works with 1 card less and has to work with sometimes 2 card hands. In a situation like that, I was actually able to use that Fang Strike to bump up the damage of my Desires of Flesh, and I got a attack action off the top, and then I also had my opponent block with an attack action, which means I gained 2 life. I'm sitting at 21 life in Clash, and that's just simply because you have to have your wits about you when she's attacking with a stealth card. You have to know whether or not you're going to actually be able to, avoid any kind of damage there. Unpreventable Rune Chant, not the end of the world there. It's Deathly Delight's going to come in. He essentially gains a life if we both lost life. Because I know there was an Unpreventable Rune Chant, that makes me know that he lost life. So he essentially nets equal on this attack if it hits. But I'm simply just going to go ahead and block out a little bit here. Not too worried about it, honestly. And I'm going to take some damage. But my opponent is constantly being chunked down by that Blood Debt. You'll see that Blood Debt up here in the this area right here. That Blood Debt, every single turn that he has cards in his Banish Zone, and I also just banished even more cards from their Banish Zone now. Every time they have cards in their Banish Zone, at the end of their turn, they take damage equal to the amount of Blood Debt. This is really powerful for me because it just means I go, hey, the more in your Banish Zone with Blood Debt, the better I feel, because you're not going to be able to use every single card in your Banish Zone. Chain can use every card in their Banish Zone. Vincent, not so much. So in this situation, they're coming in with another Deathly Delight. This time it's a red. And we're just going to block out to the best of our ability. Our opponent does Pummel, though, which is very scary. 12 damage. That's like nearly my entire life total. So I am going to go ahead and block out some here and just kind of hope for the best. But I do know that this hand is not the best. I'm trying to kind of utilize my undertow stilettos to the best of my ability, but the Pummel is going to screw me over because I'm going to have to discard a card. But I ended up pulling into a Hiss, which actually works out very well, because now I had to discard a card. I'm probably going to end up just discarding the Super Fantastic Double Trouble. But I end up getting rid of the Hiss instead, because it's the only thing that costs me a resource, and I theoretically don't need to do that. So now we're going to finally probably start using our daggers a little bit. Daggers are a great alternative to where if you're just trying to do some chip damage, force your opponent to block things that are not stealth attack actions. It's really going to change up kind of how they view the play style of it. So I'm going to come with the Spider's Bite, just attack with an Art of Desire. If they block for 3, I get to play my Bang Strike that I have in Arsenal. So they do end up blocking for 3 here. I believe they add a card from hand as well. There you go, for 6. So no point in me playing my Fang Strike there. I just waste it. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave it all in there. They get to overblock, and then they get to just keep going with their turn. Mage Master Boots is coming out, and now they have 2 float, 4 rune chance, and the ability to now come in with a ton of damage. Again, if I don't block this out properly, then I go ahead and I die. The other thing, though, you have to notice is that they're at 3 health and they have 5 blood debt. 5 blood debt means that at the end of their turn, if they couldn't clear out enough cards from their banish zone, they die. So I just full block here, and I pass my turn, and they die to blood debt. Now, a lot of that damage for that game was done on the side of Vincent themselves, but it's just another idea of showing you the power of getting those cards into the banish zone. Every single champion in Hero would rather have their cards be in the graveyard if need be. A lot of these shadow heroes care about cards that are in their graveyard put into the banish zone. I'd say probably if there was a hero that is going to be very rough, it's going to be Chain. Chain has a lot of go again. He's able to make his shadow cards have go again. So he's able to get a lot of those cards out of the banish zone. And as a matter of fact, his whole goal is to put a lot of those cards into the banish zone so we can have a very long chain at, chain, pun intended, at his thing there. But the way New plays, it's very, very straightforward. A lot of it is just make sure to come in with a stealth attack. And then if you have enough damage to get over your opponent's defenses, awesome. If you don't have enough damage to get over your opponent's defenses, don't worry about it, because they're probably going to overblock, or you're going to be able to just sneak in even just like 1 to 2 damage and be able to banish cards from the top of their deck, as well as the cards that are blocking that stealth card too. So just keep that in mind. Double Trouble, again, a big contender for being the best card in the deck, because you can just double attack reaction and you get some amazing, amazing results in that regard. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's deck tech for New, the Mystic Assassin, and hopefully you'll like to check her out in Clash as well. I'm very excited to see how many people change her up, and maybe they don't make her specifically towards the attack reaction stuff. Maybe they end up going more of a just stealth specific kind of deck, using things like Prowl and all these things. If you enjoyed this content and you want to see more of it, please make sure to like the video and then go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. We are working closer and closer towards 2,000 subscribers, and I couldn't do it without you. Very, very happy to have you here in the Dragon's Lair as we continue to cover all things of the budget of Flesh and Blood. And again, the link to this deck list is in the description down below. But if you have anything special you want to say about New or any of the heroes in Part the Mistveil, maybe you just wanted to talk about your favorite hero in Clash, let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to chit chat with you there and have a fantastic discussion. Also, if you wanted to become a channel member, you certainly could. That is a nice way to kind of help keep the lights on here over at the Ashen Wings TCG studio. And it is certainly much appreciated. You get member-only videos, and then you also get loyalty badges and some emotes to use for when I am live. So if those things fit your fancy and you want to support the channel, by all means, but it's absolutely not necessary. Even if you just end up subscribing to the channel, that's more than enough for me. So thank you all so much. Remember to have fun in the Flesh and Blood. And I will see you all very, very soon. Nerd out.